Like you are in a constant state of becoming as a mom, evolving, right? You're never arrived. And so I think having that compassionate lens and realizing like essentially every time you give birth, you are reborn yourself, right? As a mother, right? So you are a newborn mother, if you will, when you bring that baby into the world, when you bring another baby home. And I think when you like frame yourself in that light,
And it's a ticket talking mother for the figures. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking mother for the figures. That's a comma.
Hey, Gabriella, nice to see you again.
hey, nice to see you too. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for coming to my platform, and I'm so excited to talk with you. This is like a very important topic and close to me, and it's all about, well, postpartum health, but I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm a postpartum coach. I'm also a licensed therapist and I'm certified to treat perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. I'm a mom of two little ones, and in between, that first transition from with my son to when I had my daughter, I noticed a huge need for moms to have access to more information about the postpartum period. And so I kind of sought out that education for myself and really birthed a passion in me to help equip other moms with this knowledge as well. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing now is helping moms understand the postpartum transition, and then also to work toward fighting against maybe some anxious thoughts that they might be having with the pressure that they're facing in that transition period.
Yeah, wow, it's so important. It's cool that how you like identified that in yourself, and then you realize like,
Right.
I'm sure other moms need this type of support as well. Like I've had like similar experiences as far as like my profession is nutrition. Like after I became a mom, I was like, wow, I'm sure moms need to learn how to like replenish themselves
Totally.
postpartum.
Oh, yeah.
And also like now it's like how to nourish, like raise healthy eater and nurture healthy eater.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
It's so needed. Yeah. I
yeah,
love
it's
what
like
you do.
you become more aware of these pain points that as moms have.
Right.
That's
Right. Exactly. You have that lived experience to guide you for sure.
yeah, exactly. What are some of the main things that you feel like come up when for mothers in general postpartum?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are surprised by how challenging that it feels, right? The transition period of, you spend 9 months being pregnant and preparing, and you think in your brain, I've got this all ready to go. I'm prepared, right? The nursery's done, everything's bought, all the items we need, we got diapers. And I think a lot of moms are very surprised by the emotional shifts that happen within themselves once the baby's born, for sure. So, in my experience too, I was kind of overwhelmed by that. A lot of people told me how beautiful motherhood was going to be, and they were right. It is. It's so joyful and beautiful. It's the best thing I've ever experienced. But at the same time, I was sort of blindsided by how challenging that transition was going to be.
Yeah, and do you think there's anything that could prepare you? Because I don't think like people, even when people told me it's challenging, nothing could prepare you. And it's just like you said, I feel so grateful and I love my son, and he's brought so much light into my life. Like I couldn't imagine not having him, but at the same time, that initial postpartum period is so like it's like a slap in the face, just like you said.
Oh, totally.
I don't even know if
It's very humbling.
Could prepare you for that. Is there a way to prepare?
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. I think that the knowledge is empowering. I think for me, I was blindsided by that transition with my first. And then I actually sought out my education when I was pregnant with my second. So I got certified in the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and I received a lot of that education in my pregnancy. And it did create a whole new understanding for me in the postpartum period. Mainly, it helped me give myself the grace that I was lacking in that first go around. I understood what my hormones were doing. I understood, the brain changes that were happening, and I was able to kind of hold myself with a little bit more grace. And I think the first time I was just so blindsided by it that it was like, oh man, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me that I cannot figure this out? Versus just kind of normalizing that the transition is hard on every mother in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And can you elaborate a bit more about what type of like brain changes that we experience or hormonal changes? So when we understand that what they're going through isn't like they're not going, just crazy just because it's hard, but we're actually going through so many changes. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm kind of a big nerd in this way. So even as early as this morning, I was reading one of the more recent studies that was done out of the University of California. And she was, the participant, the professor, her name is Dr. Elizabeth Chastrill, I think I'm saying it right, but she actually was undergoing IVF. And so she was conducting this research and she allowed her brain to be scanned and studied. And so first thing I want to say is, unfortunately, we're lacking in the literature here. We are catching up. Again, I think it would be a dream world where all of this is common knowledge for every mother going into motherhood, where they understand what's going to happen in their brain and their body. But we do have a long way to go. But I'm thankful. This study that just came out, I was reading it today. So they were scanning her brains from 2 weeks before conception, all the way to postpartum as well. And the brain changes that started happening, they were as early as 9 weeks gestation. So everything kind of shifts in the brain. There's really not much that goes untouched. So the biggest change in our brain, though, is the gray matter shrinks down.
Yeah, I saw
And
this.
there's a beautiful, you've seen this. Okay, yeah. It's for a beautiful purpose. It's so we can be more responsive and adaptive to like our baby's cues. But if we feel unrecognizable, if we feel foreign to ourselves, it's because we literally are. We are working with a new brain, a newly designed brain. And it's beautiful, but the gray matter is what helps control things like our speech, our thinking, our memory. And so you might have heard it said, you might have even said it too, like pregnancy brain or mom brain. It's a real thing. That's really because your brain is making adaptations and changes in order to respond biologically to your baby's cries and cues to build attachment. So it's for a beautiful purpose, but it definitely is an adjustment for sure. And you feel kind of foreign to yourself there.
Yeah. A repeating thing I hear from a lot of moms, including I experience this too, where you feel like you're kind of losing like part of your identity. And you literally are. You're like changing as a person
100%.
physiologically.
100%. Yeah, you're forming a new one, right? And so, you never can. I don't believe you can go back to who you were, right? Motherhood marks you. They talk about this in the literature too, right? They call it matrescence. So it's similar to adolescence, right? That journey of unfolding and becoming a mother and all of those changes that happen. So it's really just finding a way to move forward and adapting to this version of you rather than, trying to go back. There is no going back.
And I think it's a beautiful journey. It's just part of life. Everything
Totally.
changes. And I don't know. And going through motherhood, it's like, I feel like it's a lot of women who want to go this. And I'm fortunate that I get to experience this. And I think we should embrace that we're part of like the women that, I'm getting like philosophical, but like,
No, I love it. I love it.
Generation. And do you
It's
think
beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
do you think that like this is something that I feel like a lot of women have challenges with, like returning back to the workforce or, things like that after they've had a baby and not getting so much compassion and understanding. So maybe this research can help help establish some flexibility from because they like expect you to come back to work and then just be exactly the same like you were before. When you have like, I have a good friend, she's a lawyer, and she was just like, she has to have her phone, like, like on for like daycare, and her kid gets sick. So sometimes she has to leave early. So she ended up changing jobs to for a place that was a little bit more flexible, that she's a new mom with like a 6-month-year-old. So do you find that, do you have hope that?
Yes, a lot of moms. Right. Yep. I do have hope. Again, I think we have a long way to go, but we are making strides. I think a lot of my moms find me and my practice and my work right at that transition period. And so when they're starting to go back to work, when they're re-engaging with old versions of themselves, essentially, and realizing, wait, all of this doesn't translate into my life now. And that's okay. I think every mom has to evaluate for themselves kind of what that balance looks like. And it would be really nice if we had a little bit more support from, and flexibility from, more, I guess, traditional work environments. But I do find a lot of mothers kind of forging their own way to be a little bit more unconventional, if you will, non-traditional, and find a way to work and strike that, well, I don't love the word balance, but that harmony, I guess, in motherhood, where you're with your child and also able to, if you choose to work, to produce that income as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a growing trend, especially among like
Oh, yeah.
millennial moms who are like
Uh-huh.
my podcast, and like a lot of moms started their business on maternity leave, or maybe like the second time they went on maternity leave, because they realized like they want to embrace their motherhood and they enjoy like being moms and they want the flexibility. And yeah, so that we forge our own ways, just like all the mompreneurs that are here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it helps you really hone in on your passion too, right? Like if I'm going to go to work, I want it to be something that I find gratifying and fulfilling and aligned with what I feel called to do. I think like gone are the days of, just like going to work to go, right? I think moms want to feel invigorated by their work too and have that passion component as a way to feel like fulfilled in another part of their identity as well. So yeah, I think moms are shaking it up, especially millennial moms, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. And you
Yeah.
mentioned like for people like me who are like planning to expand their families, and you realized like on your second go around that you were
Yes.
able to be better prepared. Do you have any
Mhm.
advice to moms how to prepare for that
Mhm.
transition from like one kid
Yeah.
to the next kid? Or
The transition to two. Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, this advice probably it would apply across all across the board of like a mom's expanding, moms, entering into motherhood for the first time. But so much of what I teach and what I believe is the solid foundation for fruitful like growth in motherhood is just embracing what we were talking about earlier, that matrescence journey, right? The transformations that are happening and holding yourself so loosely. Like you are in a constant state of becoming as a mom, evolving, right? You're never arrived. And so I think having that compassionate lens and realizing like essentially every time you give birth, you are reborn yourself, right? As a mother, right? So you are a newborn mother, if you will, when you bring that baby into the world, when you bring another baby home. And I think when you like frame yourself in that light, you hold yourself differently, right? You don't expect to be fully mature or fully arrived at navigating two kids right away. You're like, okay, wait, I'm new at this. I am my mother was just born a second time. And so I think that helps rather than rushing around trying to meet standards and expectations or even like hearing that voice of your inner critic, because mine's pretty loud that first go around too. I changed the voice, I changed the noise, and it was helpful. It was fruitful. It was compassionate towards myself and much more realistic. So that's what I would say.
yeah, I love that word compassion. And that's true. Like just from the experience from my first, I feel like having like, yeah, giving yourself grace and not trying to be perfect and make sure it looks like every other mom you see on like social media or whatever, because you don't
The
know
pressures are
what.
insane.
Yes, I remember there was a period where I was saying like, baby, what's wrong with me? Like, why can I like manage to do all these things, like have this Pinterest worthy house and work out
Right.
in his nap time
Mhm.
and do this, and I'm like, now how am I not managing? But I'm like, then I
Yeah.
realized like, first of all, a lot of people are like doing it for the gram. And
Totally. It's not reality. Yeah.
yeah,
You're not seeing the corners, you're
yeah,
not seeing the shadows, you're seeing the picture perfect moments.
right.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
like every kid has different like temperaments, every mom has different capacities and help. Like some people have like their parents and neighbors and more like
So
a
true.
village, and some
Yeah.
kids are like super
So
chill.
true.
Like my sister has three, and each kid had like a totally different temperament. One like slept through the night, the first like from the, like essentially from birth, but then another one
Wow.
she
She
was
got
like
really
she was
lucky.
yeah she was
That was probably your first
one,
one, right?
that was her first
Was
one.
that her first one? Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, oh, these are like the
Yeah,
no.
exactly. And then she got a slap in the face.
Uh-huh.
Like,
That's my story too.
yeah,
God bless them. But the first and second baby, they have very different sleep
yeah.
histories. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but
learning,
yeah,
just
it's
learn
so
not to
different.
compare and not to like put all that pressure on
Right.
myself. And I
Well,
definitely,
you bring up a really good point, like the pressures, right? And it's so I hear this so often from moms, like, what's wrong with me? That resounding question. And it's so interesting that we take these pressures and we internalize them and say, okay, because I'm not meeting up to all of these, societal standards, which are impossible, by the way. Like if you think about all the things that they tell us we should be able to handle or do,
right.
it's impossible. Like you cannot, nobody can fulfill that. But then we turn it on ourselves and we say, what's wrong with me that I can't perform to this standard? And it's such a detrimental, sad, like question to be left with because it produces not a lot of confidence or compassion, but just that inner critic. And it adds to the noise of what's already a really hard job. This isn't easy.
Right. Yeah. It's the hardest. I told my husband, this is the hardest job I ever had. I worked in an office. I worked here. Like, motherhood is way harder.
It absolutely is. Yeah. You don't get to clock out. There's no off switch to it. Right.
Yeah. Especially those early years. You're working 24/7. Like, especially if you're like, with feeds, even if you're breastfeeding, even if you're not, like, you still have to diapers in the middle of the night and meetings and like you don't clock out, like you said.
You don't.
For moms who are like planning to have babies, or maybe they had a baby already and they're like want to expand their families, how would they go about working with someone like you?
Yeah. So I love the analogy of a village, right? Although that word for me, it's tricky, right? Because I'm noticing a lot of moms that come into, whether it's my practice or my coaching program, they don't have that support, right? They don't have those pillars just naturally that maybe the mothers women before us had by, surrounding community or just a different way of doing life, right? We're very individualistic, unfortunately, in this day and age. And so I always encourage moms, you have to build your own village. You have to recruit and kind of activate and mobilize your own people. And so for a lot of moms, they lean on me as that resource of, okay, I need some help with my mental health. I want to be more joyful, more present as a mom. I recognize these anxious thoughts like completely take over sometimes, and I'm not able to keep it all in balance. And I feel bad about myself for that. And so they usually they reach out for all kinds of things, but mostly my specialty, I'll say, my niche, if you will, is helping moms with anxious thoughts, because I lived through that in a pretty heavy way with my first. And I think finding that compassionate voice is something I'm really passionate about helping other people discover for themselves, because it changes everything. It's like the key that unlocks the gate to a whole new version of motherhood. So yeah, I would say moms, they lean on me as part of their village. And I am just honored to be able to play a part in supporting the mental health and having the conversations in the spaces that just naturally in our society we don't talk about, right? You think about like maybe when your son was first born, you had people come visit. I'm not sure if, moms generally get to be held in the way that they need to be in that time. It's usually like, how is the delivery? Let me hold that baby. What's it, and then how are you sleeping? And we keep it right here at the surface. And that's great. It's still a way to receive support, but there are deeper unmet needs to a mom's emotional journey. And so those are ones that I'm happy and honored to help walk alongside her and make sure she's got a space to feel heard.
And it's so amazing how this like changes culturally, because I've seen videos of like how the postpartum period is in like some Asian cultures, African cultures, where they like take care of the mom for like 40 days. I'm like, oh wait.
They do it right. Yes. They truly allow her to prioritize recovery.
Yeah.
It's the birth of the mother. They truly see it that way. Yeah. They hold her. Yeah. We have a long way to go, unfortunately, in our society. But yeah, you're right. I think there is research surrounding like the first 42 days of how you recover. It alters the next like 42 years of your life, where, that's going to set the precipice or the tone for how your brain is able to adapt and respond, how the hormones are able to rebalance. I'm sure, diet and, the postnatal depletion, that's a real part of this too, this conversation. We have that element as well, the need for nutrition. So yeah, I think if we took it more seriously and if we had more supports for moms to recover, right? But it's so quick that we expect moms to bounce back and jump back into.
I hate that. That feels.
I do too.
Oh, that
like,
makes me
me too. Me too.
Yeah, like bounce back. Yeah, I used to say when people would tell me that, oh, you bounced. I'm like, no, I didn't. Like,
yeah,
not that.
No, exactly.
But when you mentioned that for those 42 days, that's interesting. Like 42 days postpartum, like really treating your body, nourishing your body, recovering.
Yeah.
This can dictate like long-term health outcomes. For women who don't have that village, what can they focus on during those 42 days, like without the village, or how can they create that?
Yeah. For those moms that are blessed enough to be in some type of partnership, right? Some type of support, I would say that's a big opportunity to lean into. It's something that I help coach moms through, of how to best lean on your partner for support, how to communicate your needs and your feelings effectively to be able to recruit their support. Because sometimes, if in partnership, I do have a partner, and sometimes I can assume that he just knows what I'm thinking, or he just knows what I need. And that was humbling to learn and to discover, no, he's not a mind reader. And so I would start, within the four walls of your home, really assess, who do you have? If you have a mother that lives close by, or any other family, a neighbor that is super kind and friendly, right? Really trying to expand and allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow people in to see the mess, to see the chaos. And it's going to require some strength on your part too, to be able to lean on them. But yeah, a lot of moms, I have to help them overcome that objection of like, well, if I say I need help, then that means I'm failing at this, or that means I'm admitting defeat. I can't do it all. And it's like, yes, you are. And that's a good thing, right? You're recognizing the impossible standards that maybe you've been wearing on your shoulders like a ton of bricks. And it's not failure. It's the start of levity, I think, too. So I would say, yeah, start with who's in the four walls of your home, and then geographically, maybe expanding outward into, neighbors or support. You have any type of communities around you. In this day and age, too, we have so many online groups that moms can connect with. I've found a lot of moms jive and connect with other moms, maybe in a similar stage or a similar season. And that can be valuable as well, even leaning on them for different types of support emotionally throughout the struggles too. So yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I'm not going to kid you. It's not an easy thing to do, to build your village, but with that intentionality, I think you have a reward of levity. Yes, exactly. You have to put into it.
Yeah. Sure. And there's something like profound that you said to me was allowing, like, it's not a sign of weakness, because that's a problem that I have. I'm in general a person who's like a bit reluctant to ask for help. And that's something that I've been recently, since I became a mom, I have no choice. I have to ask for help.
Oh yeah. You're like, white flag, surrender. Yeah, I can't do this. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, realizing that you don't have to do it all. And like, I remember I heard this annoying conversation. It was like, kind of like an older, parent was saying, but my mom, she did everything, and, but, and was she happy, and was she healthy? And I know, like, this mother also, like, she passed away at an earlier age. She was always stressed and anxious. So I was like, don't tell her that. Like, that's not a great example. You don't want somebody like,
what's her mindset like?
I don't want to work myself to the bone and like to be unhealthy and be unhappy. So that's another thing we have to release, that in order to be a good mom, we have to be completely selfless and just give, like, I told myself, like, my self-care is important. And if I'm good, then everybody else in the house is good. If I'm not well, then it's going to reflect, like, how I treat my husband and my kid and, everything. So speaking of self-care, that's like a big part of this podcast too. What does like your self-care routine look like? How do you find harmony with two little ones, and of your relationship with your partner and work? How does that look like?
That was a great question. I totally agree with you. I think it's absolutely crucial for me. I used to think I feel guilty if I take time away, or if I'm not somehow giving back to the family. And I realized just how vital it is for me to be replenished so that I can show up as the best version of myself, right? Because I'm the only one that can give my kids a happy mom, right? Nobody else can fulfill that role. And so I would take that responsibility really, really seriously. So my mood, my emotions, my health, it's my responsibility, not theirs. So I try to separate that and really be intentional and disciplined to carve out that time. And it might feel selfish at first, but I know this is a deposit, right? To help me in the long haul be present and patient and effective and joyful as a mom. But yeah, for me, that balance has looked like fighting for time to exercise. I grew up playing sports. It's just kind of like a natural part of what I enjoyed to do. And so I found for me, that's usually the quickest way for me to have the endorphin release, to feel the dopamine, the all the happy chemicals. So I do a lot of strength training just in my garage at my house. I found this girl on YouTube. She uploads free workouts and I don't even have to leave the house, but I do work to work that into my schedule, a couple times per week. And that's really life-giving for me. I also, let's see, other self-care things I do. I connect with a lot of moms like within my area too. So from my church community and maybe other, overlapping friendships from school or daycare, I try to connect with moms. So like tonight, I have a book club where this group of moms, we're getting together and we're going to talk about a book and just have some really rejuvenating conversation outside of motherhood, which I think is really important too, because I'll never forget this. One of my girlfriends, when I had my first, she told me this. She said, motherhood is a part of you, but it's not all of you. And that's always stuck with me, where it's like, okay, I've got to fight for those other parts of me to be heard and felt and understood. And so I try to create outlets where I can, I guess, connect with myself in ways outside of being a mom.
Yeah, I like that. When you do this, it also mirrors to your children. You said you have a daughter especially, but also to your son. So they don't have this like idea or these like, unrealistic expectations for their future partners that they should be doing everything, all of the housework on their own and doing everything and not taking care of themselves. It'll just be normalized. Like your son in the future partnership and your daughter, they'll know that like, oh yeah, of course, like my wife needs to, take care of her body. Or your daughter will say, of course, I need to like work out and I can ask for help and all of that's okay. So I love that you're mirroring that to your children, that mommy like, loves us and she's a mom and she also takes care of her health and she also has business, like all of these things. I think it's just a beautiful example. Beautiful role model.
Thank you. I appreciate that. He usually wakes up in the middle of the night. I work out like 6 in the morning. He usually comes out there and he's sitting on the bench and he's watching me do this. And it produces good conversation. And I love that I get to model like literally building strength, right? And challenging myself in front of him. And he's even gotten to the point where at the end, sometimes he'll like cheer me on or encourage me. And I love that all the things that he's witnessing just from watching me make those deposits in my health too. Yeah, I think it's easy to overlook the benefits our children could receive from even seeing that be a priority. But yeah, I think you're right. It'll be normalized for him. So
it'll be normal. And it's funny how when I ask like this question about the self-care, it's so different than what you would say probably before you had kids, because that's something like all the moms they'll say like, oh, nobody says like, oh, champagne and cream and strawberries and they'll be like a hot bath. A workout,
taking a full shower,
and
an uninterrupted shower.
Exactly. And a lot of us also mention like connection with other moms. Isn't that something that kind of like feeds your soul? Yeah, I know.
Yes, it's so. I think there's nothing like it. Yeah, because it's the moms that we get it. We're in this together, and I think there's a certain amount of like validation and support that comes from it that can't be replicated in any other way. I've studied that social support from other moms is the number one predictive factor of your recovery postpartum. So how much social support you have. So yeah, it's one of the most valuable types of support to receive. And it's so life-giving for so many different ways. So I've tried really hard in my business because I recognize that need to create a table for moms to come and connect with each other, because that's something that I believe can't really be replicated in the therapy room. Therapy's great. Don't mishear me. I love it for the one-on-one deep dives, but there's something really equally special about not feeling alone in the struggles and looking to your left and your right and seeing another mom that's walking through the same types of thoughts and feelings,
Yeah, I love that. And so for any mom that will want to connect with you and work with you, what is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have that private Facebook community that I was talking about where a lot of moms start and they connect with other moms inside the group. They can hear me. I go live in that group once a week on topics that they want to hear about. So they get to vote what I share on. And so we can definitely include the link. I can send that to you to connect with me that way. And if they are interested in kind of doing a deeper dive, I just finished my 12-week program that is in a communal structure with other moms where we have 2 calls per week that I kind of coach them through this material. We break things down, a lot of things that we actually talked about in today's talk, which is wonderful, like the brain changes, the neurochemical changes in pregnancy and postpartum. And then it really targets like the anxious thoughts specifically, and it helps moms access kind of what's at the roots of a lot of those thoughts, and then rebuild a different version of how they speak to themselves with that compassion and that kindness. So if they're interested in that, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm so excited. I just had my first group of moms go through it, and to see the beauty that's come out of it, I cannot even like put it into words or overstate it. Like I've heard them say things like, this has helped me to forgive myself as a mom, or this has helped me to like reconcile like my traumatic birth, or connect with other moms and not feel alone. Like those are such huge outcomes. I feel so honored to even be able to have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So yeah, if a mom wants to do a deeper dive and work toward overcoming those anxious thoughts, I can help with that too.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a great combination, like the group setting and then the one-on-one, because you do need both. Like sometimes you do need to dig in a little bit deeper because you have like these individual things that you need to work out. But there's so much power in a group. And then hearing something like from another mom that maybe you were even too embarrassed to talk about, or maybe you didn't even think it was a big thing, and then you hear it from another mom, that's like, that can be so I've seen this like in my work because I've done groups too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it happens every time where, I hear they get surprised, almost like shocked that, wow, I'm going through something so similar. Or they're able to validate or model that compassion for each other and like bestow it to each other, which helps moms then be like more compassionate to themselves, I think, too. So it is really beautiful work to take part in.
It is. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a beautiful conversation.
Having me on.
And I'll make sure
I loved it.
The show notes.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much for your time. I loved being here.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta